Welcome to my video, me. In typical fashion, you do all the research, you acquire the technology when you get hyper-focused on the next fun activity. And just like I've done right now, acquire all the cameras and boats and all that fancy stuff to go kayaking with the intention of documenting what I'm doing, because that's the mission. Don't enjoy nature. Why would you want to enjoy the nature when you can fiddle with electronics and cameras and settings and phones, write scripts? That's what we all do in nature, isn't it? Here's what I've learned so far. Attached to the boat right now is a GoPro camera facing forward, the GoPro camera that is on a clip that's facing me right now, and in the back I have an Insta360 just facing outwards. I'm in a fishing kayak, which is what I originally got this for. So I've been out in the boat a couple of times now. I'm going to be mixing footage between that time and this time. This time it's a lot windier. It's changed my perception on the practicality of this whole ordeal. So a couple things I noticed about the forward-facing camera. So the idea with a forward-facing camera, in an airplane or a car, like a dash cam, it makes perfect sense because you get to see where you're going. In a kayak, you're going so slow that it's really not that interesting. It's a nice secondary shot to have once in a while to kind of, get you into the same frame of mind that I am, where I'm looking at where I'm going. It's almost seeing what I'm seeing, but it's done from a different perspective, down low. And in my case, I put the camera low enough where, for the most part, I can see the very tip of the boat, because that way it's like a nose on your face. It just gives you a sense of direction that feels more natural. But in reality, I think it's probably not something you would use much if you were to edit your footage and put it all together. You'd use it a little bit, but it's not like a cycling video or a race video or an aviation video where it's kind of cool to see where you're going. I think what it is good for is for like a time lapse. Overall, the pros, or the reason you'd want to have a bow camera at all, is it's forward facing. Everything is essentially, in the frame. You don't have to really worry about which direction the camera's pointing. You kind of set it up to the horizon and you're done. It's an advantage to have everything in front of you because you don't see all of the busyness of a boat and the oars and the paddling. You just see the nature. You just kind of see where you're going, and that's kind of cool. It's as raw of a view of the outdoors as you're going to get. But overall, it just gives you a general sense of what you're looking at, which even when you're vlogging, it's kind of the whole point, is just to see the world the same way you saw it. So, years later, you're sitting in a hot tub thinking about how cool your life used to be. And then you can kind of reminisce about the time you went back into that the kayak trip, wherever you went. One of the things I'm on the fence about is that it's low maintenance. That doesn't sound like it's something you should be on the fence about, but it's low maintenance. You turn the camera on and that's it. But the thing is, that is it. You don't really have any other option. It's mounted to your boat and away you go, and it is what it is. The only thing you can really do is point the boat in a different direction and get a different view, but that's kind of as far as you can take it. The downsides, though, if it's far enough in front of you, you can't actually touch the camera. You can't really reposition it unless you poke it with an oar. You can't turn it on. You can't fiddle with the settings. Another one of the downsides to having a front-facing camera is it's attached to the boat. It's fixed, and therefore it's really susceptible to the waves. One of the points of having a front-facing camera is that you can put it in super wide view and you get a really good perspective of what's out there and where you're going. Kind of, wraps around and you can see everything. It gets a bit distorted, but it's kind of you can just see the beauty of everything around you. The downside is that it really picks up all of the distortion and all of those waves. The only way to counter for the waves is to either go out on a really flat day or don't row your boat. Or I guess, sorry, we don't row kayaks, we paddle them. Don't paddle your kayak. Or you've got to put it into horizon mode or linear mode with horizon lock. And that can help really stabilize the footage, which is fantastic, except in order to do that, it cuts out a huge portion of the frame because it needs that, real estate out of frame to make the whole thing stable in the first place. The other interesting thing is when you set the camera up in the bow of your boat, you're usually inclined to set up the horizon right down the center of the frame, or right across the frame, because when you get the distortion wrapping up and down, it's really noticeable on a water line because it's going to, be spherical, and that's kind of goofy looking when you're looking at it. So if you set it up on the center line, you can sort of keep that moderate. It'll wrap any trees on the outside of the frame, but the water line will look kind of normal. But the downside is that it's kind of ugly. If you take your rule of thirds like you're supposed to in photography, it's more pleasing to look at, the horizon either on the top third or the bottom third of the camera. So you can't really do that. One of the cool things about a front-facing GoPro is that it becomes the go-to camera for everything. Now you can use it to look at yourself. For me, I don't really want to look at myself because it's just not much to look at. You know what I'm saying? But if you're going to be doing some vlogging or vlogging or video logging, I don't know what the cool kids call it. But if you're going to do that, then it's kind of the camera you need. It gives you a good perspective of yourself. You can also, pick it up and you can move it around. It becomes like your selfie stick where you can get, side views or, look at yourself in a way that doesn't make you look fat. For me, that's impossible, if you know what I'm saying. So the obvious pro for this is that it's very, very versatile. You can look at yourself, you can turn it around. If you only had one camera, it could also be your dash cam. In fact, in many ways that might actually be preferable because I don't think you need all of the front-facing camera footage. It's just easier to set and forget if you do. But if you just have one, this is what you'd want. The gooseneck gives you all the options. You can squish it around, you can curl it up, you can take the side view, take the front view. You don't have to worry about how the GoPro is all wired up with all of the hardware. The only slight downside, the camera is usually facing up. And for people who kayak a lot, this might not be a problem of yours. But for those of us who don't, it makes you look fat. Most of the time it's because you are fat, like I am. So it makes me look even fatter. It's kind of the view underneath your chin that when you spend, being an IT worker, where I spend a lot of the time on video conference on Zoom or Teams, I have all of the filters set up and, the camera set up above my computer looking down, and you get a false impression of how in shape you are, and then it turns out that you're nothing close to that. So that's one of the downsides of having the camera in the front, is that you just see you. It's just not cool. It's not a good view of yourself to look up. The third camera I'm using is the Insta360. It's really cool technology. You get a 360-degree view of everything, and it gives you that impossible view that you could never get, where you're almost looking at yourself from behind or in front or wherever you've got it set up. And that's really cool. And one of the most obvious things with a 360-degree camera is that you can set it and forget it. You just turn it on. You basically, all you do is you pick the height that you want on your selfie pole, attaching it to the boat. And then anything you do from then on out, you know, you can figure it out later. One of the interesting aspects of a 360-degree camera is it's kind of like looking into the mirror. And what I mean by that is when you look into the mirror as, you know, a regular person, you see an image of yourself that you get used to. Like that's what you think you look like. In actual fact, it's reversed. So you're not actually looking at what you really look like as other people see you. And you don't really realize that until you see yourself on like cameras, or you know, you turn off the reverse mirror feature when you're on a Zoom call and you see yourself how other people see you, and it's a really bizarre feeling. And what I've noticed about a 360-degree camera, when you're looking at yourself, it's almost like you're in a dream and you're next to yourself. So I think that's kind of cool. So one of the cons of a 360-degree camera is that it really comes into its own when you've got it up on a pole. And the higher up in a pole you've got, the more susceptible it is to the waves and sort of shaking. If it's wavy out, wavy a word? If there's a lot of waves, then the footage can end up being a bit of a shaky cam, which really depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're doing some action shot, then you know that might be just fine. It might actually add to the effect. But if you're just kind of going down a river like I am right now, it might be hard to watch for more than a couple of frames. One of the other things that I worry about with a 360-degree camera on a pole is that the whole concept requires that the camera can't be wrapped in anything. So the floaties that I use on my GoPros, you can't use that on a 360. So it makes me a little nervous because I don't have the pole attached to anything that floats. So I've probably got about 10 seconds to figure out how to rescue my camera if it falls in the water, which is kind of impractical. So I'm probably living on borrowed time with this 360 camera. Right, buddy? You could be gone in a heartbeat. Another option is a drone. And I have a drone, and I thought I was going to be getting some cool shots, like stuff that would be hard to duplicate any other way. And the truth of the matter is, a drone shot is amazing. You know, you can get some views of the world that you would never be able to achieve otherwise. And it is a really handy tool to have. However, when you take your drone out and then you start thinking about it, you've got nowhere to land a drone in the middle of the water. You can take off from your boat, I'm sure, but there's no way you can land it unless you're an expert and you've basically only got one shot at it. So the obvious pro of a drone is the unbelievable views that you get. But the downside is that it's really impractical. I'm not rich enough to be replacing drones. And the other thing about a drone is that depending on the type of footage that you're going for, it gives you a view of the world that you've never experienced. It seems kind of ingenuine to show where you were from a point of view that you never experienced. But maybe I'm just being a purist. I do know that I shouldn't have done arm day yesterday at the gym. And finally, it goes without saying, So you set up a GoPro on the front of your boat with a bright orange floaty on it, and a GoPro in the middle of your boat with a bright orange floaty on it, and a pole with a camera on it sticking out the back of your boat. Man, is that goofy looking. I think people who are out to enjoy nature look at you going, oh, you city slicker. But hey, that's the mission, right? Still, I'm going to take all this stuff down and then get into the boat launch because I don't want to be a dork. So I hope you enjoyed me. See you later, mate.